few will deny that our planet is not doing well, and that human-made climate change is the main culprit behind the myriad environmental challenges facing us. Whether we watch the evening news, read the newspaper, or spend time on social media, talk of climate change and the search for sustainable solutions is all around us. As governments set targets to tackle global warming, experts and policymakers are asking citizens and consumers to take their responsibility. But efforts by citizens and households alone will not get us very far when industry and agriculture continue to pollute on a large scale, struggle to reduce their emissions, and fail to provide alternative solutions for consumers. Worse still, companies are involved in greenwashing, thereby making the task even more difficult for consumers. Greenwashing, the practice of marketing a product as environmentally friendly, when in fact, basic environmental standards have not been met, can take on many forms, such as misleading labels, unsubstantiated or vague scientific claims, meaningless catchwords, etc., but always has the aim of making a product or company seem greener and more socially responsible than it really is. In this respect, the financial industry is no different, with most financial institutions proposing environmentally friendly and socially responsible financial products in response to a growing demand from individual, non-professional investors who seek to invest their savings responsibly. This trend has led to the emergence of what is known as ESG investing, a term coined in 2005 by financial institutions following a UN request to develop guidelines and recommendations on how to better integrate environmental, social, and corporate governance issues in finance. ESG refers to 3 key criteria used by socially responsible investors to screen investments, measuring the sustainability and ethical impact of an investment in a business. Financial products are slightly different from more tangible products in that their ESG ratings generally rely on the environmental credentials of other companies underlying them, but are not therefore any less prone to greenwashing. In a 2020 study, Better Finance initially set out to identify greenwashers, but ultimately it was impossible due to the significant divergences it came across between different ESG ratings. How is this possible? The main issue is a lack of consensus on what constitutes a sustainable investment and on the application of ESG criteria, leaving plenty of room for manipulation and greenwashing. Very few companies, if any, can be said to be model citizens with a perfect environmental and social track record causing 0 emissions. Rating them according to ESG criteria turns into a complicated balancing exercise, taking into account countless different aspects. For instance, how would you respectively score Company A, which has enjoyed near 0 CO2 emissions since many years, and Company B, which has consistently improved on its level of emissions, but to this day emits more CO2 than Company A? Instinctively, we would tend to give Company A a higher score, since in absolute terms, it has a lower impact on climate change. Yet, Company A has not improved on its track record for years, whereas Company B has made clear efforts towards becoming more sustainable and environmentally friendly. Complicating matters further is the fact that ESG rating providers often demonstrate ESG performance by comparing a company with its industry sector peers, instead of players from the overall economy. This is highly misleading, since, for example, a fossil fuel company could achieve a high rating within its peer group of fossil fuel companies and score better than, for instance, a wind energy company, who received a lower ESG score than its peers in the renewable energy sector. But where does this leave the environmentally and socially conscious individual investor? It is crucial for ESG ratings to be reliable to prevent greenwashing, but this is easier said than done. A lot more work and research are needed to ensure ESG factors and the underlying science actually foster investments in responsible companies and push less environmentally conscious companies in the right direction to mitigate climate change in the long run. And even if regulators and policymakers get it right, and ESG factors can really be relied on to correctly assess a company's or a fund's ecological and social credentials, the situation remains complex. Responsible investors would tend to divest, that is to say, remove their money from those funds or companies with a low ESG score and move their money to those companies who walk the talk. Alas, divesting is problematic in and of itself, as investors increasingly disengage from irresponsible companies. For instance, selling their oil stocks on the cheap to other investors with limited interest in transitioning out of oil, they are actually doing our planet a disservice. Investors should, on the contrary, engage with the companies they are invested in, keep their oil stocks, and use their shareholders' voting rights to push these oil companies to accelerate their energy transition. Clearly, there is still a lot to do before we can confidently tackle greenwashing head-on. But in the meantime, what can a socially and environmentally conscious citizen and investor do to invest sustainably and avoid greenwashing? Well, first of all, individual investors will need to do some homework and look beyond product titles and marketing claims. If you are interested in investing in a fund, read up on its objectives and check the top 10 investments listed on the fund fact sheet to see whether you are happy for your money to support these companies. You can also check whether a fund manager actively seeks to influence corporate behavior or has engaged with companies by voting on corporate issues or challenging management, disclosed in periodic reports, and see whether this corresponds with your priorities and preferences. These are just a few steps any individual investor can take to mitigate the risk of greenwashing and make their money matter. But there's more. Instead of waiting for 100% reliable ESG information based on robust sustainability standards, you, as an EU citizen or honest product provider, can take matters in your own hands and report false green claims to your national competent authorities. After all, greenwashing and misleading sustainability or ESG claims amount to instances of misrepresentation, mislabeling, and mis-selling, as well as unfair competition. Don't wait, but denounce greenwashing by contacting your competent national authority. If you have suffered damages due to greenwashing, seek legal guidance or contact the German Investor Association, DSW, or Better Finance with views on obtaining redress.